Computer. Okay. So, welcome to Faith and Calm. This is going to be episode 181. We're heading up to 190 and then on 200. So, thank you so much for being here. Amazing how we've gone so far. 181. How many years is that already? Gee, that's
a long time.
A long time. So I'm not going to talk too much about the war this week. I wanted to, because there's something interesting in the Parsha, and this story is so fundamental to things that that changed my way of looking at things and understanding people that I don't want to pass by it. I want to cover this. I want to make sure that we touch on the subject, and I think it's really inspirational and interesting. So the parsha starts out. Parsha's told us it's talking about Yaakov and Esav, the birth of Yaakov and Esav. That's the beginning. And at the beginning, I've said this one before, but each year I get a better understanding of it. So bear with me. I think it'll be interesting. So at the beginning of the parsha, with Yaakov and Esav, it says that Rivka was pregnant with both of them, and the two children were v'yiratzatzu. They were struggling inside of her, and she says she doesn't know what's going on with this pregnancy. She is so concerned about it. So she goes and literally what it says in the Chumash is she goes and she asked God, which means that she went to Shem, who was a prophet, and said, please inquire of God and explain to me why this is happening to me. Lama Anochi. She actually doesn't say, why is this happening to me? Lama Anochi means, why am I? Which is a very philosophical question. I mean, some people want to know what they're supposed to do. What am I? But why am I? Like, why do I exist? Why am I? Why am I? It's a very, very esoteric question. And explain to her that there are two kids inside of her and that they're going to separate from at birth, and they're going to go both very different paths. And she goes back home and she has two kids. Now, somehow this answer is supposed to calm her. And I don't know how it's going to make anybody feel more calm to know that you're carrying on two kids, and one of them is going to be a tzaddik and one of them is going to be complete opposite of that. That's not very comforting words. So that's the first question. But the question is also, why were they fighting? What were they struggling about? So Rashi, as you see, there says v'yiratzatzu doesn't mean necessarily fighting, means running. So what it was hinting at was that when Rivka was pregnant and when she would walk by a place where there a yeshiva academy, Shem Aver, Yaakov would be moving to go out. And when they went by some sort of house of avodah zarah, of idolatry, Esav would come out, and that's what she was worried about. She said, "What kind of a kid is this? This kid is, gravitating to both Judaism and idolatry at the same time." So she explained that it were two kids, but that still doesn't really answer it. That just makes it, still bad. I mean, that you've got two kids, one of them is going to go towards idolatry and one not. Okay, that's the first question in the parsha. The second question is, we talk about Esav, and we usually, when we learn the Chumash, we're taught in classes, we're taught, that Esav was bad. Esav was a bad boy. How can he be bad, though? I mean, think about it. I mean, he was destined in the womb to be who he was. He was already gravitating to evil. In the womb, he didn't make a choice. And you can only be called evil if you make a choice. He didn't have a choice. I mean, it was more no choice than you would say about a lion as a choice to whether to eat animals or not eat animals. A lion doesn't have a choice. A lion is born that way. It's his genetics. That's his nature. So we don't say a lamb is nice because it doesn't eat lions. We say, or a lion is bad because it eats lambs. It's its nature. So Esav was decided by God, and that's not his choice. It was God who decided it. So how can we call Esav bad? He was chosen from, and why was he chosen as bad to be bad? Why did that happen to him? Now we're getting more to the question that we're going to try and answer today. So that's, what does it mean that somebody is chosen to be bad? And then the last part is, and if you still keeping with me, is this is interesting that if you read the simple text of the story of what happened in this week's Parsha without any commentary, which is a good way to do it sometimes because Rashi didn't have Rashi to learn the Chumash. So if you just read the straight story, it doesn't sound like Esav was so bad. I mean, just look at the text. The first thing that he knows when he first comes out is he's coming out and he's being born, and all of a sudden he's got this younger brother who's holding on to his heel and trying to keep him back. I mean, that's not a good way to come into the world. And he didn't do anything bad. He just said his brother was already at his heels. So, I mean, who's this little brother who's bothering me already? And then the next story that we're told is that, you know, that Esav was a guy who liked to be in the field and Yaakov liked to sit in the tents and learn. Okay, they had two different natures. One was ADHD, and one of them liked to sit around and was a good boy. But it's not bad to run around the fields and like to hunt. And that's all the Chumash says. It only says that he likes to go outside. And he comes home one day and he's hungry, and he wants something to eat, and he sees his brother, and he's making a pot of lentil soup, and he says, "Can I have something? I'm hungry." You know what his brother does to him? I mean, look who's the bad guy. His brother says, "Okay, you can have it, but you have to sell me everything you got. Your firstborn, your rights, your life, you know, your all your sign over your car, your Maserati, your house, your keys to everything. I want everything." That's you know, all he asked, Asa could say, all I asked for was a bowl of soup, and you're my brother. You can't give me just a bowl of soup. It doesn't sound like Esav is the bad one. That's, if you just read the literal text, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like Yaakov is the one that's causing the trouble. And then, of course, you have the next story, the last story with them, and that is that Yaakov and his mother are both scheming behind his back to take away the birthright. All he was going to do was make some food for his father and have him eat it and get a blessing. And that was supposed to be a very special moment together. And he finds out that the two people who are closest in his family, his brother and his mother, have made a very deceitful plot and stolen the birthright away from him. That's what it sounds like. And so, you know, so Esav is like, you know, Esav is crying. And you know, it rarely says in Chumash anything about emotions. And yet, this is one of the few places it says Esav lifted up his voice and cried and said, well, that's why he's called Yaakov. And he's crying bitterly. And you know, it's interesting that Chumash is like telling you, you should have some sympathy for him. I mean, this poor boy, he never got to be who he wanted to be. And when he was born, his brother was bothering him. When he became older, his brother was taking away his birthright. Here he's taking away. I mean, it sounds like, you know, Chumash wants you to feel for him that he's just a sad boy. Now, that doesn't mean that the rabbis are wrong. Rashi tells you what behind the scenes, all the terrible things he was doing. He was a murderer. He was an adulterer. He did a lot of things. But it's interesting to know that the Chumash, at the surface level, doesn't want to say anything bad about it. So to understand the story and to understand something about ourselves and about the journeys that we're on, we have to look at an explanation that comes from the Rambam. The Rambam wrote an interpretation to Pirkei Avos. It's called the Shmona Parakim, the 8 chapters. It's a little pamphlet, 8 short chapters, and he explains in there an interesting thing. He says that basically people are born with 2 general traits, and he calls them in, I don't know Arabic, but in Hebrew, the way they're referred to is the tzaddik ma'ula, the person who's a tzaddik from birth, and the person who is kovesh yisro, the person who has to struggle in life. And he's basically saying that there are 2 different ways people are born by nature. There are the people who just from birth are just good and things go well with them and they fit into the system and everything works nice for them. And then there are the ones that have a life of a lot of difficulties and a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges and a lot of other problems. To say it one way is as follows. Sometimes in a family, there's two children. One child, every morning, the homework is all done. The clothes are all folded nicely. They're completely ready for the bus right away. They make breakfast for themselves, everything. You never hear anything bad from the teacher. They wear Miss Goody two shoes. Everything they did was right and good. And you never get any complaints about them. They grow up, they do all the right things. They go off to Israel, they get married, and they have kids, and everything goes very smoothly and glatt and so forth. There's no life is it's just a wonderful child. Everybody says that. It was a wonderful child. And then there's another child who everything is a struggle and everything goes wrong every day. The homework's not done. This is the bus. You gotta, the principal is calling about what they did that day. I mean, I'm just exaggerating the two situations, but these are two life paths. The Rambam is saying is everybody is not cut from one piece of dough. People have different paths in life. And that was not a choice. That is something that God gave the person as their mission in this world. There are people who just are supposed to be from birth good, and there are those who are supposed to have a challenging life, struggle through it, and through that become bigger than the other person. Because when they have to work at it and they have to struggle for it, and life every day is a challenge, and you see an abyss in front of you, and you see this is the end, and there's my life is going down the tubes. That's a different kind of life. But that's not a life that God doesn't want you to be down in the tubes. So he's giving you a lot of challenges and he's giving you a lot of problems, but it's because in a certain way you will become bigger than the other person. So Esav had that potential. He had that ability to be more than what Yaakov was. And Yitzchak saw that because Yitzchak went through self-sacrifice. Yitzchak was offered on the altar. Yitzchak understood what it meant to completely give yourself over to God. I don't know why this is happening, but God, please take care of me. So Yitzchak saw in Esav something very special, and he wanted Esav to do his own path. And this is an important thing in everybody's life. The worst thing you can do sometimes is compare your life to somebody else. Why does she have everything that I don't have? She got this and she has that and she has this and she has that. And I seem to have a life that always seems to be lacking and difficult and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care about you. It just means that you have a different path in a way to get closer to Hashem. And it's cruel to try and expect certain things from that person that you get from the other person. It's cruel to compare yourself. It's not nice to yourself. It is not the way to get closer to Hashem. There was a famous Hasidic master. His name was Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl, and he explained there's a Gemara in Yoma that says that somebody who comes to tahor himself, to make himself holy, purify himself, Messiah lo, then God helps him. And somebody comes to Latame to impurify himself, Potchim lo, they open. Petach means door. They open the door for him. So most people who read that Gemara think, you know what? God says, listen, in life, you have two paths. Either you can, if you want to struggle and you try and improve yourself, I'll open things up for you. I'll help you. And if you struggle with things, then there's the doors open. You can go get yourself in trouble. Nachum Chernobyl says that's not the answer. Petach is a doorway. That's your doorway to getting close to Hashem. Serving Hashem for Esav was a very different thing than when serving Hashem by Yaakov. Serving by Hashem for Yaakov was sitting and learning. Serving Hashem through Esav was dealing with the struggles and overcoming them and overpowering them. And his life could be viewed as every day was a challenge. And you can look at it and say, I don't want this. I don't need this. Why do every day everything is so hard? Everything is so difficult. And you don't realize that really what God is saying is, I love the fact that you are always every day alive and awake and struggling and come trying to get closer to me. That is more precious to me than anything else. That's more precious than if I just made you an angel from birth. So this idea is fundamental in school. It has to be taught in schools. It has to be taught also in ourselves, because what happened to Esav is Esav was not a bad kid. He gravitated to bad. He struggled with bad, but struggling with evil and struggling with bad temptations does not make you evil. In fact, that can actually be the holiest thing, is working and fighting with them and struggling with them. Giving in to those temptations, that's the problem. So the biggest problem with Esav was he misunderstood what his struggles were, and he misunderstood himself. And that's the worst thing we can do in life, is not understand who we are. To think that we're supposed to be something other than who we are, and then to try and degrade ourselves and say, why do I have to be like this? Why do I have to be the sensitive one? Why do I have to always have these challenges and these troubles? Why do I always have to be working and working and working at the same thing over and over and over again? That was the tragedy of Esav, because eventually he saw himself as these. I just want to just I'm giving in to what my nature is saying, and it might seem simple and easier to give in, but it took Esav in a very bad path, and that's why he is called by the Chazal a bad person, because he gave in to his difficulties. If he had struggled with them, he could have become a fantastically big person. But instead, he decided, you know what? God made me this way, and you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm just going to let it. I'm just going to coast down and let that be my definition. So Esav was tragic. It was sad, and eventually, who had to take his role was Yaakov. And that's why Yaakov says that the voice is the voice of Yaakov and the hands are the hands of Esav, because that also is our mission in this world now. We have to take over for Esav, and we have to both use our part of ourselves that wants to be removed from the world, above the world, beyond the world, not involved in war, not involved in fighting, not involved in the difficulty of things in war. And God said, you know what? Esav didn't do what his task, so you have to use the hands of Esav. You have to be strong. You have to be confident. You have to deal with anti-Semitism. You have to deal with anti-Semitism in the news and in the press and other people's things. And you just have to be clear and focused and confident, and know that truth is much more powerful than all of these stupid lies that you see all over in the media. And that's the challenge of Yaakov, is staying connected, Torah, learning, taking Torah classes, being above the world, but at the same time also the hands are the hands of Esav. Esav is involved and working, and sometimes they go to war, sometimes they have to battle, and sometimes they have to shoot, and sometimes you have to get into very messy situations with human shields and civilians and other kinds of stuff. And that's also our challenge right now. That's our challenge right now, is how to deal with all of these different challenges. So Yaakov doesn't want that. They know that Yaakov doesn't want that, but Yaakov has to get involved in that, and that is our mission right now. So with that, I think I'll turn the microphone over to my wife, and I think she has some good stories to tell you, and that's going to be very exciting.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. And before I begin, does anybody want to say something? No? Okay, good. So I'm going to begin with the four things that I always begin with, which is that number one, I don't think anybody doubts that we are in an extraordinary time. And, we don't know the future. We're not God's secretary, but we are absolutely living through a revolutionary time. And we have to hope that we see a lot of good, And Emir Hashem, this should lead to open good for all Jews and for the whole world. And the second thing is that our souls were handpicked to be at this juncture in human history, and that we are, and number three, we were given all the tools that we need. We were given the Torah, which is our guidebook. We were given great teachers like the Rebbe, and open guidance about how to deal with situations like this. And finally, that what we're doing tonight, learning about the redemption, um, learning about the redemption that's unfolding now, is the fastest way to speed it up and to speed its ultimate conclusion. So I want to tell just like three little things. Not going to take long, and but I found them inspiring. There was I saw one thing on there's a source called Torah Anytime, and there was a Rabbi Yaakov Rahimi, and he was saying he made a good point. Like um, Hashem spoke to Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, right? But then, for a very long time, Hashem did not openly communicate with the Jewish people. And then he appeared to Moshe, and he appeared to Moshe when the Jewish people were in terrible, terrible trouble. And how did he appear to Moshe? Who can tell me? Nobody wants to say. So he appeared to him in the burning bush. And I never even thought about the burning bush much. I knew that Hashem appeared to him in the burning bush. And there's an old folks home, like a quarter of a mile from me, and they have a sculpture of the burning bush, and they have the expression underneath it that the bush was burning, but it was not consumed. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me, what is this all about? The bush was burning, but it was not consumed. I'm sure it's the standard interpretation of it, but it just never occurred to me before that when you do God's mission, that it can be really quite something, but you are not going to be consumed by it. You're going to grow from it. It's going to be something for you. It's going to be some benefit for you. And so too now, it's like an incredible time. It's like a time of a burning bush. It's like such a wild time we're living through. But but at the same time, so many amazingly awesome things are happening. There's this rabbi was saying that that people in local shuls are coming to him and telling him, the rabbis of local shuls are saying, every Shabbos is like Yom Kippur. My place is packed. My place is never packed. And every Shabbos, my place is packed like Yom Kippur. And there's a Chabad Shaliach on a campus in Indiana. Barely anybody even knocked on his door to come for a free Shabbos meal in the years before this, and the months and years before this. And now people are constantly knocking at his door. I want to put on tefillin. Tefillin is much more demanding than coming for a free meal. But tons of people, tons of Jews who never did it before, I want to put on tefillin. I want to help my people. So,
can I ask you, where was the first incident that you were talking about?
In New York shuls, there's a lot of shuls where like
New York.
Yeah.
Like so, Manhattan.
Yeah, and
okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, and it's true all over the world. You know how many Israeli soldiers are? There's a whole thing, buy tefillin for Israeli soldiers because they really want tefillin now. They want tzitzis like mad. You remember the story I told a few weeks ago. This woman bought 6,000 shekels worth of tzitzis because the soldiers want it. And you should see that there's such beautiful videos of the soldiers davening, just gorgeous, gorgeous videos of the soldiers doing Havdalah and all the soldiers answering. They're not, they have bare heads, they have whatever. They're not from, but they're really, everybody's really into this. Everybody's really into their Jewish essence. So the second thing I wanted to mention, there was a guy, his name is Jeremy Gimple. He was wearing an Israeli soldier's outfit. He says it seems like he's an Israeli soldier. I don't know anything more about him than that, but he spoke beautifully. And it's not here. Eskil Shimon, it's not on my desktop. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you. I'm just going to tell you what it is. I thought it would be on the desktop. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. So the morning of the pro-Israel demonstration in Israel, he made this little WhatsApp, and he was talking about how beautiful, what a beautiful. He saw all the videos of it. I think he's in Israel, and he said how what a gorgeous experience, and how can you there were no problems, no discipline problems, no it was all love and unity and nice things, and and he contrasted it to the pro Hamas things, which are full of violence and things like and racism and hatred. So he made the observation that 290,000 people came to Washington, 290,000 people came to support Israel, and that's roughly 300,000, and that's roughly the same amount of people that came to report to duty in Israel. Israel, so many more people reported to duty. Like, they called up the reserves, but so many more people came than they even called. People couldn't hold themselves back. They wanted to help Israel. So he said that that this is, he said, 300,000, that's 600,000, that's 600,000. And, we all know 600,000 Jews stood at Har Sinai. And we all know that Hashem was ready to give us the Torah, but he did not give us the Torah until we stood ki ish echad b'lev echad, as one person with one heart. And he said that's what's happening now in America, in Israel. We are standing ki ish echad b'lev echad, and this is an extraordinary happening in Jewish history, absolutely extraordinary, and it's going to be met with a beautiful response from Hashem, Im Yirtzeh Hashem. So there are millions of miracles anyway, not just, but we want big stuff. We love the miracles, the little miracles, the big miracles, but we're waiting for big stuff. So anyway, I want to tell the title of today's class is my last story. The title of today's class, I called it "One Simple Revolutionary Thing You Can Do to Change Jewish History and Change Yourself." And I want to tell you a story that'll explain that. And I heard the story from Rabbi Yossi Jacobson, and it's quite a good story. I think he filmed it in 2019 when an Israeli soldier, Zacharia Baumel, his remains were found and returned to Israel. He was an Israeli soldier who had been killed in 1980, and 1980, 1982, either I think it's 1982. And there was the war in Lebanon, and so anyway, for his body, he was in this war in Lebanon, and it was extraordinarily, I mean, war is violent, but it was an extraordinarily harsh war. He died in the Battle of Sultan Yaqub in the 1982 Lebanese war in Lebanon, and many soldiers were 20 guys were killed, and his body was missing. His and some other people were missing. Some of them were prisoners of war, but his body they never found. And his parents, he was only 20 years old. He was a kid who had made Aliyah when he was 10 years old with his family from Brooklyn, New York, I believe. And when his body was not found, his parents turned the world upside down to find out what happened to him, especially his father. And they really were hard. They were very disappointed in the Israeli army that they didn't find their son, and that they felt that that the Israeli army, the Israeli government was not doing enough to find the remains or the live person of their son. There were rumors that he was still alive, and for years and years, for decades, the family was extremely bitter about Israel, extremely bitter about, here's their son was, he was in the Israeli army. He should have been taken. They should turn the world over to find him. Find, what if he's still a prisoner, And so anyway, um, at a certain point in April of um, in April of 2019, his body was missing. He went missing in 82, and in 2019, um, that's 37 years later. The mother, who is now 90 years old, the father already passed away. The mother, 90 years old, gets a call from Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu, and he says, "We found him. We found him. The Russian government found him in Syria. They found his remains, and Netanyahu flew to Israel, not to Israel. He flew to Russia to get the body and bring it back. And the next day, he was buried on Mount Herzl. And at the funeral, the Netanyahu was there. Then Israeli President Rivlin was there, and Rivlin spoke, and then the daughter, the sister of Zaharia Baumel spoke, and she spoke about, she spoke nicely about, I wish I could hug you. I can't hug you, but at least the earth of Israel is now hugging you. You gave everything to Israel, and now the earth itself is hugging you. And she made a cryptic comment, and she said, and my family wants to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for not forfeiting the opportunity to recover my brother's remains. And that was it. And then the funeral was over. And it was, a cryptic comment, but then the story came out later. The story came out later through Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu. He was. Video? Yeah, it's not on it. It's okay. I told the story already. I'm okay. Thank you. So anyway, the parents, not the parents, the mother and the sister told this story to Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu, who's a very big rabbi in Sfat, and they told him a remarkable story, a story that we can all learn a tremendous lesson from and implement even tonight. So they said that they told Rabbi Eliyahu, they told him how incredibly bitter the family was, particularly towards Bibi Netanyahu. They're incredibly bitter that he was not doing enough, and they talked negatively about him for years and years and years, extremely bitter. And then the family had a meeting. They had a meeting probably in 2017, a family meeting, and they decided, you know what? We're going to stop judging this Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, he's the head of the Israeli government. I don't know, whatever, he on and off the head of the Israeli government. And we're going to stop judging him. It's not a simple thing to be the head of the Israeli government. Israel is surrounded on all sides by people who want to just decimate it, get rid of it. And sometimes 700 bombs fall on Israel in 2 days. The pictures of the Iron Dome, it's incredible. It's like, how many come? It's incredible how many bombs Israel has to bat away. It's just incredible. And they said, maybe he didn't not care about us. Maybe he did put in efforts. And, he has a lot on his shoulders. Let's decide. We're going to have a Lev Tov. We're going to have an Ayin Tov towards this man. We can't judge him. We're not in his position. It's bitter what happened to us, but we're not going to judge him anymore. We're going to give him an Ayin Tov, and we're going to assume that he is doing and he did everything that he can. 2 years pass, and it's 2019, and they get the call from Netanyahu that they found the body. And the mother and the sister, and he tells them that, and they tell him, we want to tell you that 2 years ago we had a family meeting. We want to thank you for your efforts. We want to thank you that you finally found him. And we want to tell you that 2 years ago, and they told him when it was 2 years ago, we had a family meeting, and we decided we had been so bitter towards you, and we decided we're just going to look at you with an iron tove, and we're gonna assume that you're doing your best. And then they saw Netanyahu, like something was happening to Netanyahu, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you something." At the same time, like a few days or weeks after the family changed its mind, Netanyahu was in Russia. What had happened? He was in Russia to talk to Putin. What had happened? Israel found out through its intelligence that there was going to be a crazy terror attack on Russia, and Israel let Russia know, and they undermined whatever was supposed to happen, and it didn't happen. And so Putin called up Netanyahu and he said, "We owe you a big favor. Let's meet and discuss what we should do about it. Russia owes Israel a big favor." So Netanyahu met with his Security Council. They said, "What should we ask for? How can Russia help us?" They came up with a list of 50 ways that Russia could help Russia could help Israel. And then they narrowed it down to three top things, three incredibly dear things to Israel. And Netanyahu met with Putin. And Putin said, "So, we owe you a big one. What did you decide you want?" And Netanyahu had these three things, these three top things that were like totally in his mind. He was totally one with them. And his mouth would not say them. The idea that was rushing to his mind was Zacharia Baumel, Zacharia Baumel, Zacharia Baumel. And he's thinking, why am I thinking about Zacharia Baumel? I have to mention one of these three things. And he couldn't mention those three things. And he finally spits out, "We want Russia. Russia is an ally with Syria. We think that Baumel is somewhere in Syria. We want Russia to help us find the remains of Zacharia Baumel." And Putin said, "How long? He was killed?" They said, "Yeah, 37, at that time it was 35 years ago." And Putin said, "What? You care? What do you care? A body that was killed 35 years ago? What do you care?" And Netanyahu said, "This is who we are. This is who the Jewish people are. We care about a Jewish body, not just a Jewish soul. We care about a Jew, another Jew, one Jew we care about." And Putin said, "That's something else." And he said, "This one is on me. This is on me. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do it for you." Netanyahu, his head is exploding. He's thinking, "What did I just say? Oh my gosh, what is the Security Council going to say to me? Oh, it's very nice that you help the family, that you helped Zacharia, but we could have asked for anything." And then Putin just says, out of, he continues speaking. He said, "Don't worry, this is not in the account. This is just something I'm doing as a personal favor for you, because I'm so impressed by this. Still, ask for the thing that you want." So Israel did get one of those big favors from Russia. And so when the family found out, and Netanyahu found out, that just days or weeks before, the family had decided to look at Netanyahu with an ayin tov. They enabled him to be the person that they wanted to be. He was trying. It's just like his heavy responsibilities. So as Rabbi Jacobson said, that's the way we are in Geula. They became Geula Jews. They became redemption Jews. So we all have some Jew that we have a hard time with. Maybe it's in your immediate family, maybe it's not in your immediate family, but we have a Jew or more than one Jew that we have a hard time with. So imagine they changed, they couldn't find their son for 35 years, 37 years. And because they changed their attitude towards another person, they enabled him to be something different. So if we change our attitude, if we have a Geula attitude, if we have we look at another Jew with affection and with not judging, just like, this is another Jew. I am not walking in their shoes. I'm not going to judge them. I'm going to look at them with an ayin tov. We can bring we can accomplish unbelievable things. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm sure everybody thinks this, that, just like at Har Sinai, Hashem was waiting for us to be b'lev echad, ish echad b'lev echad, one person with one heart. Obviously, for the redemption, for the big redemption, he's looking for the same thing. All the mitzvahs are gorgeous, all the mitzvahs are incredible, all the mitzvahs get us closer to the redemption. But ish echad b'lev echad is the most powerful thing I think that we can do right now. So I'm thinking in my own life, and I'm trying to change my people that I'm bitter at, people that I have consistently a hard time with. I'm trying to change my whole way of thinking, and cherish them, and cheer them on, and be their fan. So anyway, that's what I would like to end with. And thank you all very much for coming. Okay, and I'm gonna turn off the recorder, and if anybody has a question, I'm happy to answer the question, or what if I can.